I'm thinking. And that is how you take a thumbnail. I'm exhausted today, so I got coffee, and now not only am I very tired, but it feels like I'm doing jumping jacks inside my brain. But I still think that you took a right turn because you ended up on this video. That wasn't even good on the page. I don't know why I still use that joke to open this video. Hi, my little maggots, my little stinky winkies. Oh my god, that was not good either. Stinky winkies? Hi there, I am the spawn of Satan. So good to meet you. Today I want to talk about the Wrong Turn franchise, specifically comparing the original from 2003 to the reboot from 2021. If you're new here, this is how I structure these videos. I've been doing them for years at this point. First, I go over the background info of each movie. How was the idea conceived? There's some on-set stories thrown in there, and then we get into the box office and the reception. Then we get into the plot comparison, where I do a brief plot breakdown of each film, and then we go over all the little differences. Next, we compare characters. Who was the better final girl? Who was the better villain? Then we go over the stylistic differences of each movie. How did each decade influence the writing, the cinematography, etc. Finally, we go over the themes of each movie. Are we still learning the same lesson 2 decades later, or are we trying to learn something new? Then we tally everything up and we try to determine which is the superior film. If you're still wondering why I called you guys stinky winkies, that's a valid concern. So following up on that, would you be down to join my cult? I bet that just like the characters in Wrong Turn, you just walked willingly into my trap. And what you didn't know is that my subscribers are actually my devoted cult members, and you too can join the cult of Haunted Hippie if you'd like. All you have to do is click the subscribe button, and then you're in. But if you want to get in good with the big guy, which is me, and also the algorithm gods, then click the like button and also the notification bell. That way you'll never miss our next meeting. Actually, before we jump into things, hi, Editing Kylie here. I need to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Atlas VPN. A VPN is a virtual private network, and it allows you to do a whole host of things. Most notably, for movie nerds like us, we would probably use it to change our country's location, to find out what's streaming on Netflix across the pond. Or I also do live streams on my channel where I do watch-alongs of popular horror movies, and maybe you live in a country where it's not streaming, where we're watching it. Maybe you want to watch a movie on Tubi, but you don't live in the US. With Atlas VPN, all you have to do is change your location, and then boom, you got Tubi. On Tubi, they have the Terrifier movies, they have Rob Zombie's Halloween, they have the Babadook. It also blocks all malicious links and ads, and it notifies you if someone is trying to hack you. Everything that you do on the internet goes through an encrypted tunnel, and so bodies like the government or your internet service provider cannot access your data. What's also nice about Atlas VPN is their user-friendly app for your mobile device, so with the click of a button, your data is safe there too. One of my absolute favorite things though about Atlas VPN is the fact that when you change your location, sometimes it makes planning trips cheaper. That's right, with hotels or flights, sometimes if you change your location, those prices will drop. But the best part of all of this is that they're having a huge summer deal right now. So if you use my link as listed on screen, at the top of the description box, and in the pinned comment, made it real easy for you, you will get 83% off of your Atlas VPN subscription, plus 3 months for free. There are so many perks to having a VPN. I have loved using it for watching horror movies in different countries. I'm currently planning a trip out of country, and it's been so beneficial in doing all my research for hotels, car rentals, you name it. So once again, a huge thank you to Atlas VPN for sponsoring this video, but now let's get back to the content. With that out of the way, let's talk about the first Wrong Turn movie that came out in 2003. Wrong Turn was directed by Rob Schmidt, written by Alan B. McElroy, and was produced by Stan Winston. Stan Winston is a legendary effects artist, and so you probably recognize a little movie called The Terminator that he did the effects for. You might also recognize some of McElroy's other projects, such as Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. And what's crazy is he also wrote the most recent script for the latest installment of the Wrong Turn franchise. So we're comparing 2 of his scripts today. If you're not aware of director Rob Schmidt, this is probably his most acclaimed work still to this day. It was actually his big break. He started in the industry as a PA, and then he worked his way up to being a DP for a while. For my non-film set people, that stands for director of photography, and sometimes the term is interchangeable with cinematographer. Until finally, after working in TV for a while, he got himself an agent and started to pursue directing movies. Surprisingly, before he got the script for Wrong Turn, he was sent a script for a sequel to Hellraiser, and he was actually really excited about it, though it just wasn't meant to be.
My agent, Lee Keel, I got out and I was like super excited, and I called her in LA, and she was like, Rob, if you do that, I won't represent you anymore. She didn't want me to do a sequel.
If my agent said that she would bail on me for directing a Hellraiser sequel, I'd be like, okay, fine, I guess we're done here then. Hellraiser is one of the first franchises that I would want the reins to, Dios mío. But lucky for us, he listened to his agent, and Wrong Turn was the next script that came along. He said he didn't find the script original, but what he liked about it was that it was really simple and clean. He was also really invested in the idea of paying homage to 70s classics like The Hills Have Eyes and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'll have a lot of fun behind the scenes stuff to share when we get to other segments of this video, but for right now, let's talk about the reception. They had $12 million to make this film, which was pretty good for an early 2000s slasher, and it went on to make $28 million in the box office, so it more than doubled its cost. The monetary success sparked what is now a 7-film franchise, and Rob Schmidt almost directed the first sequel. However, the contract that he signed specifically stated that if he were to direct the sequel, it would have to be a theatrical release. And at that time, the studio wanted to take advantage of the booming DVD market. So the sequel went straight to video, and Rob missed out on his chance to direct it, even though he really wanted to. As far as critical acclaim, this movie has never really seen much love, but it has its fans, including myself. The critics gave it a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is to be expected, but what I didn't expect is the audience score sits at 54%. Though with over 100,000 ratings, I guess I shouldn't really be surprised. It is a pretty schlocky B-movie slasher from the early 2000s. It also has an average rating of 2.8 on Letterboxd, and I myself give it 3 stars, so I kind of think that we all know what it is. She's basic, but she's fun, and it's a nice time capsule to the early 2000s, 70s throwback era. It came out the same year as the TCM remake, which has pretty much the exact same vibe. I mean, the final girls are wearing the exact same outfit, for crying out loud, an outfit that I have officially coined as the early 2000s final girl fit. See also Texas Chainsaw The Beginning, as well as House of Wax, and I'm sure a few others. So this is not like a lot of the other classics that I've covered. I think this movie falls into a little bit more of a niche category, especially concerning the reboot, because I feel like nobody saw that movie. I mean, me and all my friends did though, and we all enjoyed it. Like I said, same writer as the original film, which is a very rare occurrence. Unless you're Eli Roth and you think it's a good idea to remake Cabin Fever only 14 years later, I don't know. It was directed by Mike P. Nelson, and this is his only real stamp on the horror world. He seems kind of brand new to directing, but he will also be directing a segment in VHS 85, which I think is releasing this year, alongside other horror directors like Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette from the recent Scream films. Nelson was drawn to this project because he enjoyed the fact that it was not a flat-out remake, but much more a reboot and the franchise taking a new direction. He was so excited for the constant subversions that the script took. He also has a really cute interview in Fangoria where his excitement is like palpable. I was fully prepared on the first read to be thrust into a crazy slasher world of cannibals eating human flesh and splitting people down the middle. When that didn't happen, I was pleasantly surprised. I pulled this from one of his old Instagram posts where he's talking about the fact that he used to order the Fangoria magazine when he was a kid and how crazy it is to see himself interviewed in it now. I love seeing my fellow horror nerds win. However, this movie wasn't a winner in the technical sense, which is odd. It's hard to find the monetary information for this movie. I found one website, exactly one website, that said that it had a budget of $30 million. I don't know how accurate that is, but it does look like a $30 million film, so I'm gonna give it to him. But it only went on to make $4.8 million in the box office, and then a further $2 million in at-home sales, so it was a total bomb. I don't know why they didn't just push the release date, because theaters didn't really reopen until late 2021, and it released on January 26th. So of course it was gonna bomb. I don't know, maybe they just didn't really have faith in it, and it had a really limited release. I am so unsure of the logic of that decision. Critically, it does fare slightly better than the original, but also slightly worse, you'll see what I mean. The audience score is about the same, it's at a 59%, but only with 1,000 ratings, I'm like, nobody saw this movie. But the critics did give it a 65%, so it is technically certified fresh. On Letterboxd, it averages out to a 2.5 with about 43,000 reviews. The original Wrong Turn has about twice the viewership with 93,000 reviews, and it still fares better at 0.3 stars higher. Despite the flopification of Wrong Turn 2021, we may still see a sequel yet.
There's been no official talk about if there'll be a continuation of this. I can say that I would love to be able to continue it because I think there's more story there. I can say for sure, though, that Alan and I have been talking.
I hope that's true because that movie was one of the bigger surprises for me from that year. And in fact, I found a much more recent Fangoria article where he talks about not only wanting to make a sequel, but a trilogy. On June 1st of 2023, he said, I had planned 2 more films, so there would be a trilogy based around this idea of the foundation in these characters. I'd love to finish it and see it all come out the way I wanted. I'll keep my fingers crossed for him. I love the direction he took the franchise. I love forest horror. I'm rooting for him. Again, we'll have many more behind the scenes insights in other portions of this video, but for now let's move on to the plot comparison. In the original Wrong Turn, what begins as a car crash on a lonesome road in the woods turns into a fight for survival. Jesse and friends realize they are being hunted by inbred cannibals that want to have them for dinner. After a long harrowing night, Jesse and Chris battle their way out of the forest alive. In the Wrong Turn reboot from 2021, Jennifer and friends are out hiking in the backwoods of Virginia when strange occurrences begin to pile on, culminating in the survivors being kidnapped by the Foundation, a highly remote yet advanced civilization of people living off the land in the mountains. When Jennifer's father comes looking for her, they manage to escape, but Venable finds her back in suburbia. Pretending to go back with him willingly, she then violently crashes their RV and walks away. 2 very, very different movies, and of course I didn't get into all of the crazy nuance of the 2021 reboot. The original is a very basic slasher that copies the same formula as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but we get some really fun, unique set pieces. For example, my favorite one is the watchtower they climb into and subsequently jump out of. Fun fact, actor Desmond Harrington is deathly afraid of heights. It's one of his only true fears, and they didn't learn about that until they were in rehearsal for this scene. And I'm talking a true fear, like an actually debilitating fear, because they had to accommodate him, so any scene you see of him up in a tree, he's actually never more than 3 feet off the ground. Though he did agree to do the 40-foot jump from the watchtower all harnessed up. That was like the only height-related thing that he was willing to do. Another fun fact, that favorite scene of mine was doomed from the very first take.
There was another shot that we did was the landing on the branch, and when Emmanuelle Shrieky, who's a sweetheart, was, I want to say, her first take, when she caught her arm, there was a loud crack, which was her shoulder popping out of the socket.
Oh my God.
Yes. I was like, not to sound selfish and self-interested, but I was like, I am fucked.
Not only did the stunt woman get pretty injured, but Eliza wanted to match all the stunt work that she did. Her reasoning was that she didn't want her friends to watch the movie and be able to go, hey, that's not you in that scene. But anyways, back to the plot. One of my favorite things about it is kind of the misdirect they take you on in the beginning, and I'm not talking about the cold open. In the first 10 minutes, they set up Chris as the main character, and it's so not him. The minute Eliza Dushku is on screen, you're like, oh no, this is our final girl. Not in a bad way either, not in oh, this just became really predictable kind of way, but more in oh, this is who I'm rooting for? Okay, yeah, dude. It's even funnier when you learn that Desmond was hired first, and they were trying to build the rest of the cast around him. They were kind of trying to turn him into the next star. So I love that minor fake out in the plot, because as soon as she steps on screen, you're like, oh, this is the girl. Oh no. I gotta stop. The fake outs in the reboot are much more intense. Pretty much every expectation you have in the beginning gets shattered by the end. One of the first fake outs of the movie is when they pay homage to the original in the beginning when their tire blows out, and you can see the Foundation people are watching them, but because she simply knows how to change a tire, the movie's plot can't move forward that way. This movie really dared to ask, what if a woman knew how to change a tire? My favorite subversion is probably them turning the inbred cannibal trope right on its head. I love that initially we're in the mindset of these friend group, and I'm on board with them when they think that these people are trying to harm them, but then one of the biggest gut punches comes from the judgment scene when you really feel the ache of these people who lost a member of their tribe. This man has lost a brother. So at this point you're going, oh, so they don't have to run from inbred cannibals, but they do have to run from a highly organized and intelligent society. But then they join them. Then the last act of this movie gets a little bit messy. I feel like it ends 4 different times. You have her and her father escaping, and there's the fun twist of the pricks in town actually coming to help them. At that point, I was like, oh, cool, a redemption arc for the How interesting. They just wanted to throw twists at us so badly. I don't know. No. No more. Then they get away and there's a lovely fade to black as they drive. I was like, perfect, it's over. No, it's not. Venable finds her, and so there's the scene with her family where there's the reveal that she's pregnant, and then he kills everyone and she kills him. But then, oh, that was in her head. So then she's like, okay, I will go with you. And she gets into their camper in slow motion, the credits roll, and then psych again. She crashes the RV. She's stabbing people wildly out in broad daylight, and then she walks away. Like I said, about 4 different endings. They get away from the Foundation. She kills Venable when he comes back. Psych, no she doesn't. She goes with him. Credits roll. Psych again. She crashes the RV. That's 4. It's a lot of endings. I do think that I prefer the simplicity of them just driving away in the original. But I have to admit, I am glad that they leave it open to a sequel. Nelson apparently has more story to tell there, and I'd be seated for it. Especially because I believe that he probably has a deep, deep well of lore about the Foundation just locked and loaded. Now I have just a few fun behind the scenes facts about a few almosts that happened in these films. Starting with the original, the cabin scene was originally going to contain Philia. Rob Schmidt brought that up in the interview that I've been featuring throughout this video, and he never elaborated on that, so we just kind of have to sit with it. There was also a huge spat about who ended up killing Three Finger.
You know, I'll tell you with the final battle though, at that was the point in the project where there's a thing that happens a lot of times where when 2 people are a couple on a movie, their relationship gets really close and intimate. And as a director, you're terrified of that because eventually they'll have like a lover's spat, you know, and then not want to be on set together or whatever. That was happening while we were filming that climax. And there was an argument between Eliza and Desi about who gets to kill Three Finger, which was brutal. They started going to the producers about it. It was about who was the lead of the movie. It was like a proxy battle for who is this, whose movie is this. I eventually, this is going to sound ridiculous, I prayed. It's funny that I pray over horror films, but I prayed. I said to the producers and everybody, in my heart, Eliza should kill Three Finger. You know, that's what happened. Desi's holding him and she puts the axe through him.
This was all news to me, including the fact that Eliza and Chris were in a relationship at the time of shooting this. I should have known though, because there's an extended scene of them just making out after they're in the waterfall and she tells him how her boyfriend dumped her over voicemail. I'm glad they cut that because that would have creeped me out. Like, let's not have our heroic lead prey on our final girl in the most vulnerable moment of her entire life. So good call there. Moving on to the reboot, the movie was originally going to end as soon as those credits started rolling. The RV wasn't going to crash, she wasn't going to walk away with Ruthie, but Nelson decided that it should be included.
Why would you make such a bold choice when it's never been done before and think that's the way I should end my movie?
Honestly, like, because I thought it was cool.
More directors should do stuff just because they think it's cool. I'm actually a huge proponent of that, but that's all I've got for plot fun facts, so let's move on to our character comparison. I'm not going to go over every side character, I'm just going to talk about them as a unit. Especially in the original, they just don't really have any personalities. They're the perfect early 2000s young adult slasher specimens. In the reboot, I love this friend group. It pretty closely resembles a lot of my friend groups. They all have their own personality. You spend a good amount of time with them, especially in the first act, learning about their ambitions, and you really get attached to them. My favorite relatable moment is when the gay couple comes out clearly hungover and they cheer for them. I'm like, I have been there. On morning 3 of a music festival, the friend that you thought was gonna sleep all day suddenly stumbles out of their tent. You're like, yeah, woo, 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 and then you give them a bong rip to clear the hangover headache so they can keep on going. I'm just kidding, I have not known the festival lifestyle in a while. I am too old for that. It's a young man's game, and I'm at the bitter, bitter old age of 24. Sometimes I improvise. Ooh, I'm digging my own grave. I am not gonna sleep tonight. Let me put it farther away from myself. Anyways, so they put in the work to be like, he's the little bit temperamental one, she's the oncologist, he's the preachy but well-intentioned environmentalist. And I was loving living with these characters for a little while as they were sort of the fish out of water in this backwoods town. To the point where when they started getting killed off, it was genuinely upsetting. Also, not them killing a gay first. Did they think about the optics of that? I think it already goes without saying that I much prefer the friend group of the reboot. They're just so much more fleshed out. They're not just there to be like, let's have on this deserted road while we wait to be killed. Consider it an experiment in probability. Blah, blah, blah. Matthew Modine is also an interesting addition to the reboot. He is our sexy papa from Stranger Things. I don't know that he added a whole lot. I actually think the runtime might have benefited from him and the whole family situation being cut out, but they wanted to do this kind of vague character arc for Jen where she doesn't know what to do with her life, and then in this movie she finds herself. Her dad is a big part of her arc for whatever reason, and so is her stepmom. Her stepmom is like, ugh, she went to go find herself because she's just putting off making a choice.
Focus on my boys, our boys. For once.
Yeah.
Please.
Women who are competitive with a man's daughter, right to jail.
Right to jail, right away.
They made me hate her for no reason. That literally is an issue that never comes up again. Why did you just give me this lore of this family where the stepmom seems somehow threatened by her stepdaughter? What? Why can't you focus on my boys for once? Our boys. I guess it does help to serve the backdrop that Jen doesn't feel like she fits in anywhere in her life. Whatever, not much to them. We must now compare our villains, who are big, ugly, giant nothing burgers in the original and scary, sexy Bill Sage with a clean-cut beard in the reboot. They made this man look so fine. It's stupid, actually. But the inspiration for the hair and makeup of the Foundation was from the Civil War era, actually. Because this group of people is more or less suspended in time from when their ancestors fled from the war. He's the superior villain in every type of way because he does everything the inbreds do and then some. The scenes of Jen manipulating him with sex are so diabolical, the way they exhibit this leader who clearly feels entitled to it. It adds that psychological level of feeling like you're going back in time when women were traded around like property. That's what marriage certificates used to represent. Plus his relentlessness that by the end, when Jen is pregnant, he goes after her. You just know in that man's heart and soul, he believes that he owns her. Just major creep, major ick, but he's also so hot. It's a wreck. It messes me up. As far as our leading boys go, Chris is also kind of a nothing burger. He's just a very generic, heroic good guy. To Desi's credit though, he broke his ankle during the scene of him running away from the cabin and kept that to himself. Finally, Schmidt asked him what was wrong because Desi was getting super agitated and was like, this is the last take I'm gonna do and no more. So then he showed him his ankle and they still did another take after that. Darius, on the other hand, is pretty complex. He's a little all over the board for me. He lets it be known from the very beginning. I mean, there's just explicit dialogue about how he wants to live in a more equitable society. But you never imagine he would actually want to stay there, especially after only living there for 6 weeks. Like, come on. Darius annoys me, to be honest, because why does she have to say, please don't hate me?
Please don't hate me.
While she literally just saved both of their lives. The only thing that I would be saying in that situation is, you're welcome. You know what? Maybe I am glad he stayed there. Maybe I'm glad. Now, getting into our final girls, I adore Jen, okay? I think her mind is a diamond. Comparing her to Jessie from the original is going to be hard. I almost thought that I wouldn't be able to pick a favorite. Jessie is just a no-nonsense girl. She makes quick decisions. She's brave. She's willing to be bait. It also just reads as very real to me. I feel like Eliza pretty much is Jessie, which Schmidt agrees with. He adores her, although his telling of how they met is very weird.
I knew Eliza's work. I didn't know her well. We were eating lunch and she was kind of pretty, but not super pretty. And then I don't know that just some people can do this where you fall in love with them. If you hang out with them too long, you like fall in love with them, you know? And I was like looking at her and she was getting more and more beautiful each moment, you know? It was disturbing. Like it was some kind of spell happening, you know? About 15 minutes in, I was like, she is the most charming, fascinating woman on earth, you know?
Like, why would he even say that? Just say that she's a beautiful girl, and the longer you sat with her, you realized she was just as beautiful on the inside too. She wasn't that hot to me at first, and it was the weirdest thing. I got talking to her and realized she's beautiful. He discovered being attracted to someone's personality for the very first time. Good for him. Backhanded compliments are so weird. Don't do it. He could have kept that to himself. Bottom line, Eliza Dushku, we love her. I do have to say the acting in the reboot was a major step up, especially from Charlotte Vega, because mama, those tears. Not a single take with a dry eye, and I bet that you didn't know that she's British.
My character Jen, sure, she is a bit unsure, she's a bit unsettled by life and its lack of direction, and I think this trip is probably a moment for her to try and find herself. She doesn't expect to find herself in the way that she does.
I couldn't tell that she was putting on an accent at all. Same thing with the guy that plays Darius. They're both British. I don't know if it's fair to compare these final girls because what Jen has to deal with is just psychologically so much worse. She is fighting for her life on this psychological battlefield of pretending to be this nasty man's wife, of shooting her own father with an arrow. Like, okay, Katniss, but that could not have been easy. I know it's not a fair comparison because Jessie also ended up with a hot new boyfriend at the end of the movie, and Jen lost her boyfriend at the end, as well as losing all her friends. So I'm sorry that I think I lean towards Jen, but Jessie is my girl too. I think that about covers our characters. Let's move on to the style comparison. I love a good cheesy 2000s slasher. I crave it even. The fact that this is an easy substitute for the TCM remake or House of Wax, I mean, it's kind of weird. It almost feels like it's a remake, but it's not. So unbelievably of its time, like I said, she even has the early 2000s final girl fit. Everything about this movie is pretty simplistic, but another attribute of this era, which I would classify as the early 2000s, like 2000 to 2002, is that we get some mad practical effects, baby. The best moment for me being, of course, the grotesque axe to the face with the body falling out of the tree. That moment probably has the most wow factor for me personally. But another favorite aspect of the style of this movie to me is the production design. So let's talk about that cabin. Just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, really, they took their time with this production design and it shows. And a fun fact about this, the production designer would go to local flea markets in Canada to find rusty old farm tools for the set. I'm also going to be so real with you right now. This looks like a lot of the homes of some of the men that I've dated. Exact same level of grime, the same level of shame, which is 0. Bring back shame. Men learn how to clean. I know it doesn't rhyme. I'll work on it. But there's a reason why so many of y'all are ending up alone. Consider buying a toilet brush, a vacuum even. Not relevant, sorry, but I'm finally dating a man that takes pleasure in doing laundry, so I'm never looking back. Anyways, a final note on the original, the cinematography is fine, and I'm saying that generously. We're in this beautiful location, and they climb up this tower with this gorgeous view, and they bless us with this lovely shot of the back of their heads. The music is swelling at this view, and you're like, I can't see it. There's also this really awkward extended shot of the leads bum scooching down this wet rock, and we see it from multiple angles for exactly no reason at all. They realized, yes, with all the story beats we have, okay, scene 12 and, okay, so I think our runtime is coming just under 60 minutes. Maybe let's throw in the gas station scene, let's throw in that unbroken shot of them bum scooching, maybe that'll add another 5 minutes. So a huge stylistic difference is that I think in the reboot, the stylization of the cinematography and all the nature that they showed off really helped to sell the location. Again, maybe not fair to compare because this looks like it was shot on 4K while the original was shot during a time when a lot of horror was just shot in standard HD. All the nature shots in the reboot are just such a vibe. You can't convince me otherwise. It really gives you the sense of being lost out in the woods. There's a moment where they're looking out over this beautiful cliff, and really they were out in the middle of nowhere, which is why they were able to sell it so well.
You know what? It was absolutely amazing. It was lovely. We were in Hocking Hills, which is pretty much in the middle of nowhere. For us, for the actors, it was hard in some ways because obviously, you know, it's not as comfortable, but it was great because it really helped us get into character because it feels like a character in itself, the location. But for crew, it was something else, like having to lug everything around, the rain, the weather, darkness. It was pretty intense.
So snaps for the crew. Thank you, crew. I know that must have sucked ass. What didn't suck ass were the effects of this movie, though. Obviously, we have to talk about the tree scene and poor Gary who turns into Smushface. This tree was completely CGI, which I didn't realize. I think it looks great. I also thought that poor Smushface was entirely practical, but on the director's commentary, Nelson said that it was a mixture of practical and digital. This was also a rough scene for them to shoot. They actually ended up talking about it for an hour before they shot anything. If you know anything about film production and how like, oh, time is money, we gotta move, we gotta get these shots, you know that's a crazy amount of time to dedicate to that conversation. But I think it worked out. It's a very raw scene, very intense. Another completely practical moment is when Adam's head is getting bashed in court. Originally, that scene was supposed to linger on his head the entire time it was getting smashed, but that scene alone caused the MPAA to give the movie an NC-17 rating, and so they had to cut away. Nelson said on the commentary that he hopes that an unrated version will come out someday, because that brutality was supposed to mark a turning point in the film, but furthermore, it's also just awesome. Other style highlights, I mean, the wardrobe team just absolutely went off with this one. I love how occult-inspired the Foundation looks with their masks. It's like caveman chic. The entirety of the production design is phenomenal. Never once do I feel taken out of the film by any of the set pieces or the wardrobe or props. It's a highly stylized movie, but it's very understated in the way that it's presented, which is like the perfect combo for a totally immersive film. That will actually do it for all our style comparisons, so let's move on to our final segment, our theme comparison. I'm not sure if we're actually supposed to be learning anything when we watch the original Wrong Turn. In fact, I think that part of the beauty of that movie is that it's just really mindless fun. Here's a lesson though, learn how to change a tire and none of that would ever happen. The reboot is very thematically loaded. I think that there are a lot of different interpretations that one could take. At its core, it's all about prejudice, and not just from dirty red state Republicans, but also from us young city liberals. Apparently, we're all the same. I find that this messaging falls apart in a few places, so let's just walk through what we learn. When we get to this backwoods town, everything is framed as pretty horrifying. So many grisly white dudes who may or may not be showing their dead deer around town like absolute psychopaths. Then when they try to unravel our prejudice by having the prick from the beginning come to rescue them because he's like, oh, well, I had a nephew get lost in these woods. Am I really supposed to sit there and believe that this ignorant backroads racist would come save me and my gay-ass friends? Oh, he went to his doctor because he listened to them about his yellow eyes and now we're all singing Kumbaya? Okay. Did you think I forgot about this?
Who's the black fella?
It's a rather interesting dichotomy of like trying to present this redemption arc as if they still don't hold all those beliefs. And yeah, actually, the young people's prejudices ended up being correct. They were right about all their instincts pretty much. And yes, the person who ultimately actually needed to learn something did, so it does seem to fare in favor of the younger people, right, our protagonists. But the movie's overarching message is like, well, we all have prejudice. We all make incorrect assumptions about people. For instance, this guy beat up Matthew Modine only just to try to scare him out of town. It was well-intentioned, the fact that he beat him senseless. So no, this movie is not really making me rethink any of my prejudices about these backroads country people, especially because also they set up the whole thing about how, oh my gosh, these young people, they murdered an innocent member of this foundation. They weren't at all what they thought. When in reality, no, from the very beginning, they were fucking with their car. All those traps were pretty evidently set up for humans to walk into. It's really fun in terms of the plot because we go, oh my god, they were just trying to help him, like they weren't gonna eat him. And then it's like, oh my god, no, they were evil after all. Also, it feels like a fun homage to I Know What You Did Last Summer when they're arguing about what to do with the guy that Adam just killed. But in terms of their thematic intentions, I think it's such a mess. What does work for me is the commentary that, yes, all three of these groups held different types of prejudices towards each other. That is indicative of this issue existing on a much larger scale in the world, and of course that's doing a lot of harm. But don't act like it's equal. Don't act like, oh, we're all responsible for carrying this prejudice. When one group wants to commit genocide on the other, and the other is just trying to fucking survive. Again, yes, ultimately, thematically, I do think that it fares more on the side of our protagonists, but there are still like gotcha moments in the film where you can tell that the intention is to like unpack everybody's prejudices. And I don't think that they really fairly examine just how unequal they are. Hi, I'm editing. I don't know if I'm fully making this point here because I'm just saying that this movie does no work to unpack how disproportionate prejudice is from the right. Like, okay, yeah, it kind of made me think about, it's probably wrong for me to just assume that people that live this way are uneducated, that they're all racist, whatever, sure. But there are people out there who want me dead because, like, I've kissed girls. Do you know what I'm saying? There are people that think that, oh my god, she's kissed another woman, she's gonna groom the children of America. It just gets under my skin a little bit that there was not even an attempt to start to unpack that. I get that that's a lot to do, but they really want me to sympathize with the guy that was like, you liberal yippies are what's wrong with the world. When it's like, no, your political party wants me dead, so... Anyways, hope that helped. Bye! Oh, so... Anyways, on that note, let's tally everything up. In terms of plot, the original is simple, easy, fun, love it. But I do prefer the twists and turns of the reboot. I have a little more fun on that roller coaster ride. In terms of characters, it's pretty much a sweep for the reboot. I would be a part of that friend group if they would have me. Also, Venable and his sexy accent for the win. Though Eliza pulls some weight, I'm gonna have to give her a point. Stylistically, they're almost even for me because I love the cheesy 2000s vibes. I often crave that type of atmosphere in a movie. However, so much effort went into the stylization of the reboot, I gotta give the credit where it's due. And finally, as far as themes go, the reboot gives me a little bit of a headache. The twists on our expectations work wonders for having a fun plot, but actively work against having thematic cohesion. So I'm going with the original for the final category, which is interesting because there's really no theme there. Tallying that all up, the reboot wins, but a very valiant effort by the original, so yes, claps for the winner. Reboots and remakes hardly ever win for me in these videos, so well done, Mike P. Nelson. As far as personal preference goes, I think that I enjoy the reboot slightly more, but I think that they're pretty even for me, because I watch them for very different reasons. Do I want a time capsule of the early 2000s, or do I want a really, like, nature-heavy stylized horror movie? So, on a personal note, I think they're kind of even for me. But that's all she wrote for Wrong Turn versus Wrong Turn. What do you think? Which movie do you prefer and why? Let me know in the comments. You also probably noticed these names scrolling on screen. These are my wonderful patrons who keep the lights on at Haunted Hippie Studios. These videos are not possible without them because they supplement my income. They ensure that this content remains free for the rest of you guys. As a thank you to them, I post bonus content over there all the time, at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. Sometimes I post a bonus video back to back, 2 days in a row. You never know. I talk about recent theatrical releases with my dad. I do other solo reviews. I post updates like investors meeting type videos about equipment updates and stuff about my short film, which you can donate to down below. You can also sign up for the Patreon, also linked down below as well. If that's not for you, the rest of my social media is also listed down below. I always keep you up to date on everything on my Instagram, which, speaking of, I just released the trailer for Shark Week, which is happening right now. So join us. Catch us on a live stream. Join a little cult meeting. More than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that I catch you in the next one. Bye!